Hey everybody, this is William from the Godzilla Files coming at you today with another book review. Today we're going to be looking at Godzilla 2000. I had previously reviewed Godzilla at World's End, and this book kind of takes place before that. Overall, the book is enjoyable, but it is a mixed bag. So, we'll kind of get into a lot of that. There's a lot of things that it does that I actually particularly like, and on top of that, there's a lot of things that I didn't like. So, let's start with the Kaiju. So this book, just like at World's End, is full of Kaiju. Some done right, some done for no real reason whatsoever, but overall, still there's a lot of them. The first one to talk about is Kamacuras. This is by far my favorite Kaiju from this book, which is crazy when you think about all the other ones I'm about to name. I think the chapters with him, and with them I should say, because it's the whole entire swarm, is done really well. It's actually horrifying reading some of these chapters. I would have almost preferred the book to be mostly about them. That's how good they were. The next Kaiju that then appears is Varan, or Varan. I know it's been said a couple of different ways. He appears. He's okay. I don't think there's really too much for him to do in this story overall, but it's nice to see a kaiju like him get an appearance in this book because he's a kaiju that I feel like does just not get enough love from media or a lot of stuff in general. So it's cool seeing him. I think he definitely, the way they describe him, has more of a Showa appearance to him, which would make sense because he doesn't really have any other appearances outside of that era of films. Next kaiju up would be Rodin. So I like how they kind of built up Rodin. This Rodin is definitely a mix of the Heisei film from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. I think it's a mix of that Rodin that we see in that film and also Fire Rodin. So there's a lot of times where when you're reading the description of him, you kind of see both. So I think he kind of just meshed them all together, or both of them together, and made one Rodin. So it's pretty interesting. I really had I liked how he described Rodin, and I'll get back to her in just a little bit. The next one up would be Godzilla. Godzilla awakes from the events of the last book, Godzilla Returns. I haven't read that book yet, so I don't know how he got where he was, but, based off the cover and also just the way they describe him, he has a very Heisei appearance. I think most of these, the major kaiju have a Heisei appearance to them if they were ever in that era of films. And which makes sense because these were made right around, I think this book was made like 1997. The Heisei period would have just ended. We also do have Mothra in this book. She's kind of in and out. Don't see too much of her. She's only in, maybe if you add up all the pages, a chapter. She kind of works on the outside for most of the book and through a kid, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But again, another Heisei appearance for Mothra. Finally, the real big baddie, King Ghidorah. I definitely was excited for King Ghidorah. I wish I could say really good things about it, but I can't. We'll kind of talk about the kaiju in a little bit more detail in just a second, but he, again, just like based off the book cover and also just the way they describe him, has a mix of both the Heisei and Showa King Ghidorah because of the way he moves. Because the funny thing is, the way he moves, he kind of almost seems like King Ghidorah that you remember. The head's always moving around in the Showa period. Like he kind of moves like the Showa period King Ghidorah. But definitely visually, when I was thinking about him and on the cover of the book, he has that Heisei look to him. That's all the kaiju that appear. And while it doesn't sound like a lot, the story does kind of jump around a lot to include all of them. So sticking with them, I feel that the book does a great job with most of them in general. My really big complaints are, I feel like a lot of the kaiju didn't have anything to do. Like Rodin is a perfect example. Rodin is built up in like a chapter or so of, like this Native American is kind of talking about him and, it's calling him the Thunderbird, and you kind of build up to this and then you find out the name is actually Rodin. And then Rodin appears. And it's a really great build-up. I really liked it. Thought it worked well. In my mind, the reason why I thought Rodin was coming was because throughout the whole entire book, the overarching story is about these asteroids coming. And you kind of know that King Ghidorah is in those asteroids. So they kind of build that. So you're thinking Rodin is going to join the fight. That's why he's all of a sudden appeared, or she's appeared. But really, her story is just going from one point all the way to the other to lay an egg. The egg hatches, and then Rodin disappears from the story. So while there's some really cool scenes against, the military, it leaves nothing. The whole story just it's almost pointless. You could take that out and add more of King Ghidorah, and I think this would make the story better, or even Kamacuras. And that's the whole thing about this book. I kind of I feel like even King Ghidorah doesn't have a good enough time in this book. Like, he really legitimately appears 5 chapters till the end. Chapter 25, he's finally kind of appearing. Chapter 26, he lands on Earth. And then chapter 27, he does some damage or so, or maybe chapter 27, he lands on Earth. 28, he does damage. 29, he gets beat. Chapter 30, it gets all wrapped up. So I think kind of the build up to King Ghidorah takes too long, and by the time he gets here, you're kind of just like, oh, okay, that's cool. He finally made it, and then he gets defeated very quickly. But that's not to say that everything that this book does is bad. I actually like some of the stuff about Godzilla's body. When he gets attacked, leaving a he kind of explodes, and there's like damage to him, and his skin falls on someone, and blood of him kind of falls on people and stuff like that, and it's actually a disease going around now. That's a really interesting thing, which I don't think a lot of movies or anyone else has ever really talked about. Like, he's like one big radioactive monster, and so his damage, like whatever happens to him, like his body must be radioactive, which then would have to cause some kind of disease or something. So I kind of liked how they did that. I thought that was a really cool idea that they kind of touched upon a great deal. And, I hope maybe they'll kind of go more into that. I know in World's End they don't really, but I would like to see maybe the last book they kind of talk about that a little bit more. So yeah, I think that was cool. The action sequences in this book are amazing. Again, this author is amazing at doing military battles. The amount of knowledge that he has is just amazing, and I think you can't go wrong with them really all that much. The military battles, I think, in this are very well done. And, every kind of thing that they try to do to Godzilla, or they try to do the other kaijus, it just doesn't ever work. So, on that end, I think all that works out pretty well. The human characters are surprisingly a little bit more enjoyable this time around. I couldn't remember any character from the last book, but in this one, 2 stand out. You really follow the story of Kip and a girl named Lori, and they both have interesting stories. I found them engaging enough to where I kind of, when I went back to them, I wasn't like, oh, great, these people. So I think that was a really well done thing, and I think the reason why it works is because there aren't as many people in this book comparatively to the other book. World's End has maybe 12 to 14 characters. This maybe has like 7 or 8, and those are the really only ones you will follow. You'll have characters that come in and out of the story, but for the most part, it's those 7 that you're following. And so, I don't think you really need to know about what happened in Godzilla Returns, the first book of this series, to really enjoy this book. So I wouldn't worry too much about, wondering if, you need to read that book first. There was nothing really that I noticed or that I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. So, that was one good thing. Another thing that I liked was they made Godzilla a force of nature in this. He was perceived as a bad guy through the whole entire thing, but there's a chapter where he actually kind of comes up against a tornado, and people watching it kind of start understanding that Godzilla is, not there just to destroy things. He's just living, and he's just massive, and he's going to cause destruction. So I liked how that scene played out. It's a little bit better than me just saying, oh, he's going up against a tornado. It's a little bit more than that, but that's the part where people start seeing him a little differently, and that part makes a little bit more sense in the next book over as well. I also felt that throughout most of the book, the human response to the kaiju was actually really good, even though it's amazing that they kept losing these kaiju over and over again. I think everything that they did makes sense to me. I feel like politics and everything else like that, aside, everything that the army tried doing or everything that the president decided to do, whether that be letting Godzilla just walk around or attacking, made sense at that moment. And, I can't fault them. I mean, that's the one thing, another thing this book does really well, is that it makes it feel like this is actually happening. And if it did actually happen, what would be the realistic responses to these monsters? especially with the Kamacuras, which is, like I said, those couple of chapters with them, they're done so well that I would love another book. And I know I said that before, but if you build those characters up again, like you did, it works out great. But yeah, I think as a Godzilla fan, I definitely enjoy this book. I would recommend it to people to just kind of give it a chance. I don't think you should go in thinking this is going to be a complete like Godzilla versus everyone kind of book, which the cover kind of makes it out to look like that. It's not like that. They're very separated. Godzilla only ever fights King Ghidorah, and that's about it. So don't think you're gonna have Rodin flying in the background here while they all fight. But even though it has some of its flaws, I would still say you should go read it, even just for the Kamacuras parts and stuff like that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video review. Sorry that it's kind of late. I know I usually post on Wednesdays. Sorry about that. I've just kind of been busy. And yeah, I will talk to everybody soon. Bye.